I came across this true story from a subscriber, actually, one of our subscribers. I edited and moderated it for sharing with you. I changed the names and certain details in the story for safety and anonymity protection for all the individuals involved in this situation. However, the core of this account is entirely true. If you like the video, please hit the like button and comment below. I'll try to respond to each comment. My name is Vanessa, and I'm 27 now. I am going to tell you about something that happened to me when I was younger. Get comfortable because this story is intense. I must have been about 18 or 19 years old. I had just finished high school, but a bit later. My parents have a farm in the countryside, but in fact, my uncle Jorge and my aunt Bet, my mom's sister, live there and take care of everything. They are nice, but the truth is that I have never liked going there. I don't like the woods, mosquitoes, or that sort of thing. I'm more of a city girl. I love the noise, hustle. To be honest, I can't even live without the internet. Anyway, my parents had to spend a few days there sorting out some paperwork and finalizing loose ends, because they'd decided to sell the farm. So, naturally, I was dragged along. My mom didn't want to leave me home alone, fearing that I would get into trouble, not knowing that I already was out and about with half the world. So, off we went. I sat sullen-faced in the back seat, with a suitcase full of clothes and a look on my face that said that I would rather be anywhere else. The road was full of potholes, dust, and surrounded by trees. My dad was driving while my mom chatted nonstop about how nice it would be to unplug from city life. But for me, it felt like a sentence of isolation. Nighttime faced us by the time we finally arrived. It was a big farm, with simple wooden houses inside of it, chickens and dogs outside, and a silence so profound that it was only broken by the sound of crickets and frogs. The moment we arrived, Uncle Jorge looked me up and down and exclaimed, "Wow, Vanessa, how you've grown." With his rough yet affectionate manner, "You are such a beautiful young woman now." I felt a bit ashamed, since this was only the second or third time that I had seen him in recent years. You know how it is with relatives from the countryside, they always notice everything. I said right away that I was tired from the trip and went straight to the room. This house smelled of that typical old wood, and the rooms were really very simple, an iron bed with floral sheets that had certainly seen better days. Without a second thought, I lay down, but it was clear that my parents and Uncle Jorge were arguing in the living room about selling the farm. Opinions all varied, it seemed, my dad talking about it not being worth the hassle anymore, while Aunt Bet argued that it was part of the family heritage and abandoning it would be a waste. We got up early the next morning, since sleeping in wasn't an option with the animals. The food was all homemade, which, I'll admit, was pretty good, but it didn't make up for the lack of a cell signal. My parents and Aunt Bet left early to go into town and deal with paperwork, leaving me alone with Uncle Jorge. I went outside to try to pass the time, grabbed a chair, and sat under a tree watching the chickens peck around and the dog lazily lying in the sun. It was all too quiet. I was losing my patience when Uncle Jorge showed up, adjusting his belt, and asked, "So, Vanessa, not enjoying the calm of the countryside?" He pulled up a chair and sat next to me. I looked at him, not trying to appear too bored. "Honestly, Uncle, I am not a big fan of this stuff. I like the city, the noise, the movement. This place is just too quiet for me." He let out one of those loud laughs, the kind that bounces his whole chest. "Ah, girl, you are spoiled by city rush. This place is great if you know how to enjoy it. You can think about life and listen to nature." In the conversation, out of nowhere, Uncle Jorge asked, "So, Vanessa, are you dating anyone?" That caught me off guard. I looked at him, a little puzzled, and he continued, "Well, girl, you've grown into a beautiful young woman. I bet lots of boys must be after you." I felt my face flush and didn't know what to say, so I gave a shy smile and said, "Oh, Uncle, right now, I'm focused on my studies. That stuff can wait." He smiled in such a way that he made me feel uncomfortable, and said, "That's good, girl, keep your purity. It's tough finding a girl who respects herself these days." I wanted to burst out laughing because of the irony, but I nodded, thinking, if only he knew. The silence then resumed. I tried changing the subject, but I felt him still staring at me, as if trying to work me out. I did start to feel restless and, when I heard the dog barking in the yard, used that as a release. "I'm going to check on the dog," I said. I hastily said that I was going to check on the dog and stood, trying to escape the weight of that conversation. I really couldn't tell whether my uncle was just being overprotective or whether there was more to his words. One thing was for sure, that day in the farm was anything but a usual day. After that somewhat awkward conversation in the yard, I went inside to kill my time in the room. I came across some old comics thrown in a corner of the room, probably left by some cousin or even myself several years ago. I flipped onto the bed and began to flip through the comics. Some 20 minutes, maybe half an hour later, I heard steps in the hall. Before raising my head, Uncle Jorge appeared at my door. "Vanessa, I need to go to the other farm and pick up some boxes of bananas. Want to come?" "Oh, Uncle, I am fine here," I said. He gave me a smile, the kind that clearly did not take no for an answer, and pressed on. "Come on, girl. You'll enjoy it. You can see the other side of the farm and catch some fresh air on the road. It's better than being stuck here." I thought for a moment. Staying in that room wasn't exactly appealing. "All right, Uncle. I will get ready soon." "No need to get ready, you are fine." Saying this, he eyed me from head to toe. A slight shiver ran down my spine from the way he said it, but I put on my sandals and followed him out. Maybe getting outdoors would help me forget this lingering awkwardness in the air. If only I had known this trip was going to be a lot more memorable than what I had thought of. We got an Uncle Jorge's old truck, the kind that seemed to fall apart with every pothole. He put some cushions on the seat, making it at least a bit soft, but the dirt road and all of its bumps were not much help. Driving, I caught him a couple of times looking over towards me, but I tried to brush that off. As soon as we reached the farm, Uncle Jorge got busy loading boxes of bananas onto the truck. I just decided to kill some time by taking a walk around the place. It was serene in the countryside, but my mind felt agitated. I attempted to distract myself by walking around trees and letting my thoughts wander. It was silent on the ride back, as if neither of us knew what to say. Uncle Jorge kept staring down the road but occasionally checked back to me, trying to make some sense out of what was going on. I couldn't know how I felt, and no words could come forth from me, and so I remained silent. When I finally got home, Mom and Dad were back, as was Aunt Bet. The house was really quiet. Aunt Bet was in the kitchen, preparing something for dinner, and my parents just sat and chatted. In the living room, I tried to act as naturally as possible, but something told me things wouldn't be the same anymore. Uncle Jorge seemed to be holding back, even avoiding me at times. That night, after everyone was retired to their rooms, I still sat in the living room when suddenly I heard the sound of footsteps down the hall. It was my uncle, going toward the kitchen. I got up and followed behind him, using getting some water as my excuse, but still in sleeping clothes, a basic tank top and shorts. I got a glass of water from the kitchen and thought it was a good opportunity to initiate conversation. "Uncle, can't sleep?" He took a while to respond, without looking into my eyes, saying, "I left the window screen open, and the mosquitoes got in. Couldn't rest properly." He appeared uneasy and avoided my eyes. Turning around, it seemed he was getting ready to go back to his room. There was tension, as if he wanted this all to be over quickly. The next morning, my mother woke me up very early and asked me if I wanted to go into town with them to finalize the paperwork regarding the farm's sale. Half asleep, I said, "I don't think you'll go, Mom. I have a headache." But in fact, deep inside, I knew Uncle Jorge was staying at the farm, and I wanted to know this place a little better. What started off as a simple distraction was beginning to take a turn I hadn't expected. After doing some chores around the farm, Uncle Jorge sat on the porch with a glass of cachaca. I, with my head full of thoughts, joined him. "So, Uncle, is that cachaca any good? Let me try." He looked at me with a wary smile. "This stuff's strong, girl. It'll knock you out." I said, laughing, "Oh, come on, Uncle, I can handle it." and before he could stop me, I snatched the glass and took a quick sip. Something was burning my throat. All of a sudden, a wave of warmth went through me. That's strong, I said, making a face as he burst out laughing. I warned you. This isn't for young girls like you. You'll end up dizzy. The heat of the drink had made me bold, and the heat of the afternoon felt like a boost to that energy. The air felt heavy, like there was something unsaid between them. I slowly got up, acting dizzy, and said, I think I am going to take a cold shower. This is too much heat. Go on, girl. Cold water will help, he replied casually, sipping his drink. As I walked in, I was strolling at an easy pace even now with the burden of the moment. Once in the bathroom, I left the door ajar, not on purpose, it seemed, but as an absent-mindedness. The sound in the air was running water as I got ready for a shower. I could hear my uncle in the kitchen, milling around getting himself another drink. After a while, this feeling came that someone was at the door. Then I heard his voice. You all right in there, Vanessa? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone light and casual. All good, uncle. I'll be out soon. He stood there for a second, then turned and walked away. I knew he was trying to analyze the vibe, trying to decide if it was all in his head or something else entirely. What really had occurred between us began to feel more and more real. I stepped out of the shower, wrapping myself in a towel and still trying to act nonchalant, even as nervousness was building up inside my stomach. The cold water somewhat relieved the warmth that had been inside my body from the alcohol, but the tension in the air wasn't really dissipating. Holding the towel tight around my body, I opened the bathroom door and found my uncle sitting in the living room, still so serious. He looked like he had been waiting for something, the least trait of curiosity or, for that matter, emotion was to be seen on his face. It was no longer the jokes or small provocations which moved me by then. Whereby, my body reacted differently, as if some unspoken need or deeper emotion had taken over. The air between them grew heavier, and I wasn't quite so sure anymore if I was doing this out of simple fun or if it was something deeper, which I didn't want to admit. I retired to my room, changing into something casual yet bold, a short, strapped dress. I went back to the living room, and he sat there with a glass of cachaca in his hand. I sat facing him, very apparently unconcerned, but he was staring, I knew. His face turned, and the tension was unmistakable. He teased, and I laughed it away, but the air was potent. I leaned into the sofa, the weight of the moment palpable. What happened next was a conversation laced with unsaid emotions and gazes, but nothing more. Afterward, I excused myself to return to my room, needing to process everything. The night felt surreal, as if the intensity of our interaction had shifted something within me. Despite the ordinary end to the evening, the memory lingered, reshaping my understanding of the connection we shared. The next day, life seemed to go back to normal. My aunt and uncle sold the countryside house and moved into town. Time and distance did their work, we saw each other less often, as if the circumstance deliberately tried to wipe away every trace of that day. And I went on with my life, but it remained with me, silent and shadowy, something swift and unforgettable.